one. This is the final heat of the first round of heat races. We've got Harvey Baul in this one from Brierley, just down the road. He's a local man, one of the good old local bandits here from Formula Fast. He's not been in competition. We've not seen him in competition in the BRKC before, but in testing, he's been absolutely flying. Regularly, he can set times comparable with the front runners here, can Harvey Baul. So although we know absolutely nothing about his race skills, he certainly has the potential there of running with the fastest. And straight away to the fastest, we've got people like Ed White. He's been third in the British Rental Car Championship before. Amazing Ed White to think that, he is arguably one of the top Brits. We talk the top Brit. We talk about the likes of Lewis Manley and so on, but so often it is Ed White who ends up being the top Brit. So though he doesn't really necessarily get the headlines, the insiders, peers and people who are regularly on the various British racing championship scenes, it's Ed White is the Brit that they really look to. He's quite quiet, doesn't entirely stand out, but by heck, when those results start coming in, they tend to come in for Ed White. Sebastian Borek is racing in his first BRKC event. He was looking pretty good in testing yesterday. Phillipe Denooz, another Belgian. Marc Meulemeester, another of the Mad Brothers racing team boys. We saw his brother in action earlier on. Sean Brierley, one of the best Brits, one of the best international Brits is Sean Brierley. Sean Brierley will contest for the win here, and we will see exactly what he has to offer. But he knows full well that it's going to be very, very tough taking the fight to Ed White. Brandon Williams is one of these Covcart veterans. He's been the champion twice in the Covcart sport. He's from Leicester. He's won the Daytona 24-hour race from the other side of town twice, and he's also won the British 24 hours. So Brandon Williams comes absolutely loaded with credentials, though we've not seen much of him here. Tom Eastwood we've seen before. He's another regular on the other side of town at Daytona Milton Keynes. Obviously, we're here at Formula Fast, the indoor track, Daytona being the outdoor track. He's won races, championships, and been a front runner. Owen Burton has been around here in the BRKC for quite a while now. Last year, he was 47th. He's going to be really trying to up on that. I was talking to him yesterday during the testing while that was going on, and you know what? He really he sounds genuine for getting well into the top 40, and if you're going to do that, you're going to be looking to be in the top 30 and into the semi-finals. Keep an eye out for Owen Burton there. And then, of course, Chris Daines, one of the absolute stars 2 years ago, sort of shot him from nowhere. He's the reigning Covcart Sport champion, and he was 7th in the championship last year. So keep an eye out for Chris Daines. Okay, I'm going to be joined by Greg Smith here. Greg, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going all right. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. And how's it looking out there when you're driving around? And, what's the track like, the karts like, and the competition?
Yeah, I mean, the first heat was obviously quite a tough one. I mean, I was lapped by Ruben Boutins twice. So, but obviously when he lapped me once, he pitted, and then I got ahead of him. But then when he came up to lap me again, I thought, okay, fair enough. I'll just let him go. And then just followed him into the pits when the flag came out.
Well, at least you've got the comfortable knowledge he's the 5 times British champion and double and reigning world champion. So somebody's going to put you 2 laps down, and it's him. It's kind of okay.
Yeah, it definitely sucks when you when you look at somebody like Ruben Boutins, who's been absolutely steamrolling this the BRKC for the last 5 years, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah. I really hope one of our British drivers wins it this year. I mean, look at Lewis Manley, look at Sean Brierley, Chris Daines, Conor Marsh, Brandon Williams. They are arguably possibly our best ones to offer at the moment.
Great. Well, we've got a few of those names that you've just mentioned, Greg, in this mix here. And we've got Owen Burton on pole position. Now, bear in mind what we were saying leading into this. Owen Burton, 47th last year. I was talking to him during the testing, and he has thrown that kart onto pole position. This is by far the best performance we've seen from Owen Burton, and he was looking and sounding visibly optimistic yesterday. And how right was that optimism? He's only done it by 0.06 of a second, but he's qualified ahead of, would you believe it, Ed White, Chris Daines, Sean Brierley. Potentially a death heat in its own right there. Ed White, Chris Daines, Sean Brierley. Brandon Williams is in 5th place. I mean, he's doing great. But look at what we're dealing with here. Marc Meulemeister's up there. Sebastian Borek, Phillipe Denooz, Tom Eastwood and Harvey Baul down there. And Harvey is somewhat, he's only a second off. He can run with the best from here. This is going to be one tough heat.
Yeah, it is going to be an absolute fascinating heat to watch. I'm still supporting Chris Daines this year, but I mean, Owen Burton, I'm good friends with him as well. I was really not expecting that sort of lap at all. So big hats off to Owen Burton for getting ahead of Ed White and Chris Daines. So it's all now down to those pit stops and where he finishes.
Absolutely. An incredible thing with Owen Burton as well was he's the first one to qualify on pole in a 31-second lap time, 31.8. I mean, Ed White, my goodness, he's also qualified on 31 seconds, 31.9. But such with the speed of Owen Burton, it wasn't enough to take the pole position. So as we look on camera there, we can see there is Owen Burton. He's starting from that pole position. You can see the marshals going to be waving him off in a second. He's actually, I don't know, how calm and collected is he really? That's the question. How calm and collected are you going to be when behind you is Ed White and Chris Daines and Sean Brierley? So we're coming around now to make the start. Now, what sort of start is Owen Burton gonna make? He's experienced at starting, but never from the front. He's never been the one dictating the pace. He's gone quite early. Owen Burton's hit the gas early and he's taken Ed White with him. There's a little bit of a gap there to Daines. So Burton has actually done the right thing here. He's actually created a gap from himself to Daines. Okay, in the middle of that gap is Ed White, but at least he's sort of broken the fact that he could have had three very heavy people absolutely at him going down this backstretch on the opening lap.
Yeah, Chris Daines was shaking his head at the start. He dropped back a bit, but he's still, if he can keep up with both Owen Burton and Ed White, if he gets his pit stop correctly, then he'll probably get ahead.
Well, Chris Daines is probably shaking his head to get that big flowing beard a bit more comfortable under the helmet there. Chris Daines is making his first outing in the BRKC for 2019. We've seen him in previous events, but this is the first we've seen him of this championship, as with all the others, his first round of heats. But it's still Owen Burton. Now, can Owen Burton do a Conor Marsh? He's got 0.2 of a second ahead of Ed White, but crucially, he's almost a second up on Daines running in third. So, this is what happened for Conor Marsh. He was able to stay ahead of Matty Vrana, but he was pulling away all the time for third as well, and that just made things a little bit easier. He's not able to get away quite as well as Marsh did, but he's certainly not doing badly at all. This is great showing, just being the lead by Owen Burton. I mean, no one expected this, and he's actually making it believable. They've got 2 laps in the record book, but look at Ed White. Ed White is meaning business. I mean, you just need to take one look at Ed White there to know that, Owen Burton, you're having it, son.
Yeah, Ed White really pushing Owen Burton now. And see, Burton is defending down the back straight into the difficult left-hander. And Chris Daines is not too far behind them too as well. So I think Owen Burton's job will probably have to back Ed White into Chris Daines, and then there's more of a chance he'll get away from both Ed White and Chris Daines.
Okay, folks, well, we've got an early pitter, and that early pitter, who is that? Oh, it's Phillipe Denooz, the Belgian, and he's come over. He's quite highly rated there, but he's gone into last place. We'll see if he can make up some time now as he's running on his own. Now, it's very easy to sort of criticise Owen Burton here. We're talking here with Greg Smith, who we're going to be seeing in action earlier and later in the competition. But Owen Burton, do you think he's actually getting a bit defensive a little bit early? Would you like to see him actually just focus on setting lap times rather than trying to hold first place per se?
Well, difficult one, isn't it? Because Owen Burton is having to both concentrate on every corner and defend at the same time. Ed White considerably a little bit more heavier than Owen Burton. Owen defending down the back straight, but Ed White's still really pushing Owen Burton. But Owen's still doing a really good job on holding that lead.
Owen Burton doing an amazing job. He's absolutely squashed flat under pressure from Ed White, because when you're leading a BRKC race and you've got Ed White on your tail, you know it's time for problems, really. And so, Greg, we're talking to Greg Smith now. He's one of the British drivers here. Can Owen Burton hang on to this? Because we've got a British 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment, 5 in fact.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's incredible, isn't it? And we're absolutely steamrolling away from the Europeans, such as Sebastian Borek from Brkc 303 racing team, and who's the 21? Marc Meulemeester from the Mad Brothers, isn't it? Yes. So the Mad Brothers and 303 really need to get to work here if they're going to outmatch our top 5 British drivers.
And what's interesting, Greg, is that we've got Owen Burton. He's he's running fast, okay, but he is actually slightly off what his qualifying pace was, and I think that's actually closing this whole thing up, because right now, what looked like was going to be a bit of a checkout, for the first two, is getting backed up. Yes, I accept there's a gap between Ed White and Chris Daines, but what we've seen so far is that pulling away, and almost you feel as though perhaps that, Brandon Williams is actually closing in that fifth place. I mean, he's 2 seconds off the leader at the moment, but the way it's looking, I can see this coming down, and that's all because of what we're seeing on screen now. That kind of defensive stuff. Owen Burton being so defensive means that, okay, he's not going to get overtaken by Ed White, but he is arguably lining him up now behind him. So, he's got to do something as Owen, and it's very easy. Here we are in the nice comfy commentary box talking about it. Owen had two choices here. He had to defend right from the beginning. Oh, yes, indeed so. Yeah, call it.
Yeah, Chris Daines having to defend from Sean Brierley, who was one of the quickest guys in testing yesterday. So Chris Daines, looking at him now, he's having to defend down the back straight, and Brandon Williams in the 13 car, in the 13 car, now closing up on this battle. So yeah, Chris Daines in really big trouble here if he's going to have to stay in front of Sean Brierley and Brandon Williams. Meanwhile, Owen Burton and Ed White are getting away from Chris Daines and Sean Brierley and Brandon Williams. So it is currently a two-way fight for the lead, whereas for third place, it is a three-way battle.
Absolutely, and that fight going on, or that move earlier on, that attempted move with Daines and Brierley, has benefited three people. It's benefited Owen Burton and Ed White, and it's benefited Brandon Williams, because Brandon Williams is now on the tail of that Daines versus Brierley fight. But more importantly, from their point of view, it's given Owen Burton and Ed White that breathing space up at the front now. That's what really they could have done with pulling away from. Had Burton not been defensive and purely been focusing on lap times, what would have happened is probably this situation, but by them pulling away. I think Ed White would have all day long stayed with Owen Burton. Owen Burton's doing a great job, but Ed White, you would have to say, on paper at this stage, you would expect to stay with him. But it's given them the kind of lead they need. Now, Chris Daines is running third. We're looking at him there. He is in the slight orange flashes on his helmet. Now, he is 2.2 seconds behind the leader, Burton. Ed White is right on the tail of Burton, but that means a pretty decent gap of nearly 2 seconds between the two. And this is exactly what the likes of Burton and White need. Now, hopefully, they can see this. Burton, of course, is not quite as used to this situation as Ed White, it has to be said. Burton is sort of fairly new to this kind of thing here. Yes, we'd love to see him win, but if anyone's going to stop him, it's Ed White, and I think Ed White may well have the brain. Burton could do it, but whatever he learns, he's going to have to learn pretty quick, and he'll be learning off Ed White right now.
Absolutely, yes. Again, Owen's still defending from Ed White, and Ed White pushing him to his limits every single lap, trying to attack, go for the lead. But I think Ed White will probably wait until his pit stop. If if Ed White gets a really good pit stop, he could put some seriously quick lap times and put Owen Burton.
Absolutely, and that's why the pit stop exists, because of this very situation. In some ways, it may be that if you had an alternative strategy for Ed White, you might think if Owen Burton really is holding him up, or Ed White is really capable of going faster, then maybe Ed White ought to pit. But you've got to then think, where would Ed White come out? Ed White would come out behind Borek, Meulemeester, Williams, Brierley, Daines. That's not going to be a nice place, is it? So I should imagine Ed White will be looking across the track to see, do you know what, if I pit now, I'll come out in amongst there. Oh, very tight, and Ed White does it from the front. He's taken the lead from Owen Burton. So, Owen Burton, we've seen him lead, the last 10 or so laps. And that is a great showing by him. We've got someone in the pits, though. It's the number 60, is it? No, it's Tom Eastwood. Eastwood in the 8. So Tom Eastwood pits out of 8th place in the 8 car. There he is, Tom Eastwood. We saw him make his debut a couple of years ago. Very highly touted. Tends to most race on the other side of town, it has to be said, at Daytona. But certainly not somebody to be ignored here. Okay, and look at that scrap now developing with Chris Daines leading the way over Brierley and Williams. So we've got Ed White in the lead. Owen Burton just purely half a second behind. Now, this is where Ed White needs to show us what he's got, over Burton. Burton is staying with him. So Burton is doing great to stay with Ed White. Owen Burton has certainly not been left for dead. It's half a second. So Ed White has now assumed the lead, but Burton is staying with him. And this is what Burton needs to do. He needs to get pulled away by Ed White, get clear of those third, because Owen Burton does not want to fall back into that Daines, Brierley, Williams battle. To be honest with you, when it comes to racing in any of the heat races there, any battle that involves Daines, Brian Williams is going to be a harsh one. Greg?
Yeah, Ed White, great move up the inside at the last corner of Owen Burton. I do feel for Owen because he was doing a great job of defending, but I think it was pretty clear that Ed White was the quicker one out of the two. But if Owen can obviously stick with Ed White, like mark out where he's going, then he'll might be able to match him in terms of both laps and pit stop.
Absolutely, and it has to be said with Ed White, we've seen him win many times. He's probably one of the less obviously visible of the British drivers. We tend to talk maybe a little bit more about some of the, poster boys, the likes of Chris Daines and Sean Brierley, Brad Phillipe, Lewis Manley, of course. These are the guys that we tend to spend most of our time talking about from a British point of view. But Ed White wins lots of races. Ed White is often top British driver. And to be honest with you, when it comes to talking about a potential British winner of the whole series, you have to mention Ed White. You can't not.
I don't know. Sorry, I don't know much about Ed White. But I know Titan Motorsport are a team for the Daytona D-Max Championships, which have taken a break this year. And I was most impressed when I was watching his teammate Owen Genman, who was in the Interclass last year, steamroll his way from the back on the first round at Milton Keynes, the Daytona track, if you're wondering. And I was actually very impressed by his speed in the car, his commitment, and took it all. So
nice. Talking of impressing, though, we've got this battle really getting strong. We've got Chris Daines, Sean Brierley, and Brandon Williams. Now, obviously, Brandon Williams is one that we don't know quite so well from a BRKC point of view, but his credentials are pretty serious. Covkart Sport, one of the best known of the season-long rental championships. They're quite prolific series now. He's twice been their overall champion, and they do have a lot of champions, so to be overall champion. In the pits, though, we've had Owen Burton. Owen Burton has been in the pits now. Let's just quick switch back to that. Owen Burton, how has that worked out? It's not a bad pit stop at all, actually. About 11 seconds. A good pit stop that means no risks, basically. Greg, how do you read that one?
I didn't see the pit stop, sorry. Sorry. 11 seconds in the pits. I'm hoping that will be... there's a bit of a collision there. Chris Daines in the pits, so I think it was pretty clear he was pressurising too much. And Sean Brierley up the inside of Tom Eastwood, isn't it? And Brandon Williams getting a little bit hectic in there now. So, both Williams and Brierley trying to get past the back markers as soon as possible. Again, Williams just moving his arm around saying, get out of my way, I want Sean Brierley.
Well, it was all kicking off there. That began right down at the beginning here, where they are now on camera. What happened was Eastwood got sideways. That obviously cost him a lot of time. It meant that the Daines battle arrived there, and Chris Daines, I think, seeing what happened, shot straight in the pits. Sean Brierley shot forward, ended up some sort of contact with, Williams and everybody else who was there through the snail area, and it was all getting very busy indeed. I think it was Harvey Baul involved as well. Either way, it was really getting very pushy indeed, and I think Chris Daines might have done himself a favour by either deliberately pitting because he saw Eastwood recovering from that half spin, or whether he intended to pit then anyway. But whatever happened, Greg, that all was getting very messy. Everyone waving everybody else. It's worked out, though, that with the various pit stops and non-pit stops and kerfuffles and all the excitement, we've got Ed White in the lead from Sean Brierley this time and Brandon Williams. Marc Meulemeester found himself up into fourth place, though he's yet to pit, of course. Owen Burton is fifth, but Burton is pitted. And so we can probably expect Burton to be shot straight away. Wow, who's pitting now? It is one of our main boys. It's the 21. 21, of course, is Marc Meulemeester. Marc Meulemeester is pitting out of fifth place, so and he's dropped down to sixth. That means Daines moved up a place. Now, we've got White not pitted, I don't believe. We've got Brierley not pitted. We've got Williams not pitted. We've got Burton having pitted and Daines who has pitted. Now, Owen Burton is only 2 seconds ahead of Chris Daines, which I think is a lot less of a gap than there was when he and Ed White were pulling out to the front, correct, Greg? Was it about that? Or a bit more than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, so far I think Ed White, Sean Brierley and Brandon Williams are going long into their first stints before their pit stops. And if that happens, we could see probably that same start just as before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-way battle for the lead again if they pit much later. So it's up to both Owen and Chris to work together and put in some really quick lap times if they want to get back on the case of the 3 leaders.
Absolutely. The best thing Owen Burton can do right now is just be fast. He just needs to be fast. It's as simple as that. And that will make sure he's clear of any aggro, either from White or, if anything was to happen, he would fall back into what is going to end up back as the Daines, Brierley, Williams fight. So Owen Burton's going to need to keep himself away from that. So being fast is often, is just the simplest option and probably his chosen one. Now, what we are looking at, though, is a situation where Chris Daines has been allowed sort of freedom from the battling Brierley and Williams, and he's not got anything like really Owen to follow. I mean, right, he's 3 seconds back, but it's probably, well, I don't know, a bit of a gap to be actually looking at. Let's have a little pick up on where Daines actually is. But Daines, with some fast laps, could actually pull himself into a bit more contention than what we're giving him credit for. It's going to come down to the pit stop cycling out. It's very confusing to watch on screen, but what I would say right now to anyone watching at home, your benchmark is Ed White, who's in the lead. But look out especially for 4th place Burton and Daines, and it will be what happens with them. And there's Burton making a move on a back marker. So Burton is really not taking any prisoners at all. He's absolutely chopping through. Was that was putting someone a lap down, wasn't it? And that was Baul, I believe. Anyway, so there's Owen Burton. So he's doing exactly what we say he needs to do. I think that although they're very good, Brierley and Williams, it'll be what Burton and Daines do that actually really decides the outcome of this race for that top 5.
Yeah, it is. Burton, the faster of the 2 for 3rd. Ed White, Sean Brierley and Brandon Williams still haven't pitted yet, so I think they sooner enough that one of them is going to blink, and the question is, can Owen Burton outmatch one of them at their pit stops? That's the big question for us right now.
Absolutely, and Ed White continues to set blistering pace. He's the only one running 31.7. He's got this one in the bag, surely. He's so fast, it's unbelievable. But the interesting thing is, we were talking about earlier on the battle, Brierley, Williams, Daines. It got broken up because Daines pitted, so when Brierley and Williams then pit, you can expect that to resume, obviously. So what I would say about that, though, is really we need to be looking here at Chris Daines setting some ballistic laps. But Chris Daines is not doing that, and unthinkably, the fastest of those 3 at the moment on sheer best lap is Brandon Williams. What on earth do we read into that one, Greg?
Yeah, big debut for Brandon Williams. I actually bumped into him. First time I bumped into him was at Northampton Karting League 2 years ago. And then eventually now here in his BRKC debut, I bumped into him again. So, and I mean, funny enough, I'm in my 2nd heat with him, so that should be even bigger, more of a challenge. So,
yeah, you might even physically bump into him then, mightn't you? So we'll see how that goes. Ed White's into the pits now. This is the one. The race leader, there he is, blipping the throttle, trying to keep those revs up so that engine is right on the edge. You see, he can't go till he can't cross that line till he gets a green light. But that doesn't mean he can't be moving. He just needs to not be moving at a rate that will mean he cuts the beam. So someone like Ed White, blipping the throttle there, he's trying to keep the revs just to the point where the clutch is going to engage. And making a perfect job is what is going to mean the difference in winning or not. Let's have a look at this time. Oh, it was a fairly conservative one, to be honest. It's about 11 seconds. But, he's done enough on lap times. He is the fastest on the track. He's the fastest we've seen so far this weekend. The times are continuing to come down. So he's done everything he needs to allow a slightly conservative pit stop. Greg, that's got to be important in this situation.
Yeah, of course, Ed White was ahead of Owen Burton out of his pit stop. Burton pitted a lap earlier. Laps earlier than Ed White. So if he can work with Ed White, and then he can both catch Brandon Williams and Sean Brierley, who are just ahead of them, but pretty close. And I'm not sure what Chris Daines is doing. He's still 5th, which is still... And Sean Brierley's in the pits, and Brandon Williams is in the pits. So big mistake by Brandon Williams to pit behind Sean Brierley. And look at Owen Burton. He's taken 2nd place away from the pair of them. And Chris Daines is up to 3rd. absolutely shocking scenes.
Absolutely, and then a crucial, utter rookie error there by Brandon Williams. What a shocking rookie error. He pitted right behind Sean Brierley. Of course, when Brierley stops, Williams has to stop. And then when Brierley moves forward, Williams moves into his place. So poor old Brandon Williams. Obviously, it's a different sort of gig, and the pit stops have caught him out royally. I mean, he's been doing his best. He's running great. He's just got caught out. But such is the level that, it is a rookie error by dint of the fact that he's not experienced with this kind of thing. And, my goodness me, I think that when he looks back on this, he knows he's done everything except the pit stop. He'll be cursing it. But you know what? We've seen yet another new star coming forward. From a BRKC point of view, he's already a golf kart sports star, and a lot of people know who he is. He's a well-known champion, but to us at BRKC, he's a new name. He's fallen at the hurdle of the pit stops, but I don't think that'll happen again. Ed White wins.
Yeah, big congratulations to Ed White and Owen Burton, top two guys. And Chris Daines was third, so very happy for him. To get a really good third place, and then next up will be in the alternative layout. But what a shame for Brandon Williams, because he was on. I mean, what a shame for Brandon Williams. He did the exact same mistake I did earlier, because I pitted behind Dante Dillon on the exact same lap and got that wrong as well. So, but I mean, Brandon Williams, you can't deny him. He's really, really quick. He'll be definitely a new star in the making for the BRKC with years to come. So you've got to. I feel for him.
He'll be all right. He's got more races to come now. I mean, he'll learn from that one, and my goodness, there's one thing you can say for sure. He will never make that error again. He knows what's happening. He knows what the outcome as well. So just to recap over that race, especially for you viewers watching at home, we had Ed White winning that, and what a performance it was. 11.6 seconds on the lap time. That's the fastest we've seen this weekend. We're just getting faster and faster all the time, and Ed White, if ever there was someone who can do that kind of thing, it was Ed White. He's the fastest we've seen so far this weekend. Owen Burton, what a performance there. I mean, when you look at Owen Burton's previous in the BRKC, you're not looking at a driver, he's doing fine, but this year really upped his game there, led convincingly, pole